I was talking to Robin Quinn and Barry McCann earlier, and they said that one of the success stories, well, Australia's been a success story in terms of media literacy, and one of the reasons why they could do that is because of the centralization of their educational system. They usually do have a good idea, and it gets quickly implemented.
Right.
How does it work here in Canada and Ontario? What kind of struggles do you have to go through? And where do you foresee any kind of difficulties in the future as well to get media literacy implemented on a broader basis, even nationally?
Right. Well, of course, in Ontario, everything is based on school boards, and there are something like 70 large school boards. There's more in the total picture, but there are approximately 70 large school boards in Ontario. And the way the ministry works, of course, is that they have curriculum that is then to be implemented at the school board level. And of course, there is an administrative staff and often a consultative staff to do that. So we are not centralized to nearly the same extent. In other words, school boards have a fair amount of autonomy, but they still have to follow these broad guidelines that are laid down by the ministry. Clearly, what has to happen in other provinces is to have the same sequence of events take place as happened in Ontario, where there was a lobby going on. It really boils down to lobbies. It boils down to having a critical mass. And when that takes place, and if you can get alliances with teacher groups, subject groups, teacher federations, community groups, that we all want this. This is part of democratic citizenship in the 1980s and 90s. Then a ministry will move, and if they're revising their guidelines, what you do is you say you've got to have this as part of the curriculum. And that's starting to happen. It's starting to happen in Quebec. At this conference, we've had representatives from Quebec who are starting chapters of the Association of Media Literacy. It's starting to happen in Alberta. We've had conversations with people in British Columbia. Saskatchewan, we have Mick Ellis, who came here. He has already got something in place. So it's not necessarily exploding elsewhere, but just as it didn't explode in Ontario, it took us 8 years before we got the credibility and the critical mass to make the difference. I think it's not going to take as long in those other places to get something significant. But they're not going to suddenly do it in 1 year. It's going to take time. But the fact is the groundwork has been laid.
Okay, one of the concerns was that media literacy is located in English departments.
Right.
How can you expand that so you have a kind of a literacy program that isn't located in any particular place, but it's a program on its own, if possible, that could draw on all the different disciplines?
Yeah, so it's really a cross-curricular application, or cross-curricular applications of media literacy. Clearly, English is not the only place to have it. And I think most people realize that. We know that by the very nature of talking about the media, that it's interdisciplinary. What we have to do, though, is, because we're primarily English teachers, for better or for worse, is we have to encourage other subject areas to see that it's relevant to them. And frankly, in some areas, while they should be doing it, they don't have the kind of mindset, the receptivity to the idea. I mean, a few of them do, but whether they can turn it around, I don't know. Ideally, it should be across the curriculum, just as language is across the curriculum. So it's really, really hard to know. And, you know, even in English, they can still have one of their credits can be a total media credit. And the art teacher can do the same thing, but very few of them do.
What's the curriculum breakdown in media literacy? Every student that enters high school?
Grades 7 and 8, it's 10% of language arts. In the intermediate division, that's 9 and 10, 30% of one course. And in the senior division, 11 and 12, it's 30% of one of the senior courses.
And, okay, so you have that. And then you have sessions here. Media Literacy Association essentially gives sessions for teachers to retool themselves.
Right.
How many sessions does the average English teacher, for example, get in order to go back into the classroom and then teach media
They might get an hour and a half on a PD day. They might have a couple of evenings. So the average teacher, I would say, has probably had about a day. And maybe, I don't know, some meetings with the department, etc. How are we going to do this? What do you think of the resource guide? And what do you think of this new text? So there'll be a few conversations. And some of those teachers may have had a course at university, might have even had one of your courses.